The room fell silent, a hushed anticipation wrapping around us like a heavy cloak. The millionaire stood frozen, his laughter extinguished, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that seemed to peel away the layers of our surroundings. I held my breath, unsure whether to chase after my own fear or remain still, captured in that moment of shared vulnerability. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I finally managed to croak out, my voice a soft wisp against the backdrop of the luxurious gala. The air felt thick with unspoken words, emotions suspended in time. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Instead, tears began to fall large, glistening droplets that caught the light as they cascaded down his perfectly sculpted face. The stark contrast of his wealth and my pain left a bitter taste in my mouth. The room started to pulse with curiosity, the crowd's eyes darting between us as if we were caught in some tragic played-out. "I'm sorry," he stammered, wiping his cheeks, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotion. I didn't mean to. He stumbled through his words, but what could he apologize for? It felt surreal, like he was wrestling with something much deeper than mere empathy. In that moment that I looked around, the gilded party masking a raw reality that was seeping through the cracks. The cheerful laughter and clinking glasses faded into a distant murmur, lost amidst the turbulent ocean of my thoughts. Who was he to me? A lifeline? A symbol of the life that danced tantalizingly just out of reach. "Why are you sad?" I asked, my heart echoing the confusion that clawed at my insides. "It's me who should be crying. I'm the one in this chair." He leaned in closer, his eyes fierce and unfathomable. "Because I know what it means to lose everything. And I can't bear to see someone else go through that pain." His voice was barely a whisper, yet it shuddered with a truth that felt utterly overwhelming. "What do you mean?" My pulse quickened, every fiber of my being tinged with fear. He was revealing something significant, something I needed to understand. His gaze dropped for a moment, as if he were contemplating whether to share this part of himself with me. Then, with a deep breath, he confessed, "I used to be a firefighter. I ran into burning buildings, always sure of myself. But during a rescue, he hesitated, tears shimmering in his eyes once more. "I lost my brother. I didn't save him. I couldn't. And every day since then, I've carried that weight like a lead vest." The confession landed heavily between us, my heart aching with his pain. "I didn't know, and I didn't know how to live after that," he continued, his voice breaking. "So I threw myself into work, gave up on love, on joy. And now, seeing you, I feel like I'm being swallowed whole by my guilt and regret." An unexpected kinship flickered in the air, a connection born from shared suffering. Here was a man, trapped in his own shadows, and each of us navigating the murky waters of our experiences, desperately trying to find a way to breathe. "I'm sorry about your brother," I said softly, feeling my own burdens eased just a fraction. "But I'm still here. I'm still alive." I was surprised at the strength of my voice, curious if it could somehow propel both of us toward healing. That he nodded slowly, taking a step back to take in the entire figure of meth young man fighting through agonizing pain, caught in a vessel that no longer felt like home. Something flickered in his eyes, a glimmer of hope weaving through the threads of sorrow. "Maybe," he began hesitantly, "maybe we can help each other." Before I could respond, the sudden clamor of a commotion erupted from across the room. Shouts and gasps sliced through the opulent atmosphere. I turned my head just in time to see a figure whirling through the crowd, their face obscured by wild hair, stumbling as if they had fallen from a great height. The chaos spilled forth like boiling water, and suddenly, a woman was at my side. "Help! Help! My brother!" Her voice pierced the air, frantic and filled with desperation, clutching onto the very fabric of our evening with raw urgency. "He's hurt. He needs immediate help." In an instant, the gravity of the moment shifted, and all eyes returned to the unseen agony that unfolded just a few feet away. My heart raced, torn between my own turmoil and the surge of chaos that now erupted around me. I watched the millionaire's expression transform, his trauma merging with the panic flooding the space. Just then, as if fate wanted to unveil the true depths of our shared stories, he turned back to me, his face a mask of determination mingled with despair. "I never believed I could walk again, but maybe tonight, we're both being called to rise." With that, the frantic scene unfolded, and as the lights flickered across the crowd, I realized that the courses of our lives were about to collide in ways none of us could foresee. Hope, once a flicker buried beneath layers of despair, ignited once more as I wrestled with the shadows closing in around us both. The air was thick with tension, filled with tears that mingled with anxiety, a cacophony of voices urging one another to move, to help. As the millionaire's piercing gaze met mine, I could see the resolve hardening in his features. It was an expression of no longer being a spectator in his own life. "Stay here," he instructed, his voice fierce and unyielding as he stepped away, weaving his way through the crowd. I wanted to scream for him to wait, to be cautious, but the enormity of his decision paralyzed me. Here we were, two broken souls drawn together by our suffering, yet faced with a moment that called for strength beyond our fears. As he disappeared into the throngs of people, I shifted in my chair, straining to catch a glimpse of the woman and her brother. Anxiety twisted in my stomach like a tightening vice. What if this was another tragedy waiting to swallow me whole? A sinking dread crept in, whispering that my own struggles would soon feel worthless in the shadow of someone else's very real agony. But it was impossible to ignore the spark of courage ignited within me. I wasn't just a passive observer in this chaotic moment. I was alive, still fighting against the current that sought to drag me under. Gathering whatever strength I had left, I somehow maneuvered myself to the edge of my seat, gripping the armrest with a fierce determination. It felt like I was teetering on the edge of a precipice, trying to find the will to jump. Suddenly, I spotted the millionaire pushing through to a crouch next to a figure on the floor, the brother, unconscious and pale, his limbs bent at odd angles. Panic surged through me, a tidal wave of emotion. My insides screamed for him to hurry, to save him, but all I could do was watch like a helpless child, clinging to the hope that emanated from the millionaire. Even in the face of this chaos, "Someone call for an ambulance," he shouted as he examined the man, his hands trembling but steady enough to check for a pulse. The worried murmurs of the crowd amplified, and the phones surfaced like fireflies in the dark, some already dialing for help. What struck me was the way the millionaire transformed in that moment. The luxurious facade peeled away, and the weight of his past somehow merged with his newfound purpose. He was no longer just a man haunted by guilt. He was a warrior, paddling against his own demons while trying to save a life, trying to save someone's brother. The urgency blossomed in the air, a raw energy that felt contagious. In the midst of my turmoil, I could sense a shift, an awakening. And it wasn't only his bravery igniting that flame. There was something deep within me, a wellspring of hope that began to churn. Perhaps our shared hurt wasn't an anchor pulling us down, but a bridge leading us forward together. That a woman stepped beside me, eyes flashing with concern as she assessed my condition. "You need to sit back, please, it's too much stress right now," she urged, hovering protectively. But I could feel an unshakable urge to stand and do something, anything, to contribute to the urgency that surrounded us. "That I can help," I said, voice unsteady yet firm, but my heart was racing too ferociously for me to back down. "I have experience, I've been through things." She hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding, perhaps sensing that battling my limitations was now part of the fight. "Then let's get you gloves from over there. There's still a chance." I could see the flicker of understanding in her eyes. She wasn't just seeing a weak body in a wheelchair. She was beginning to see me. As I pushed through the crowd, the world dimmed to a single narrow lane, the influence of fear dissipating as adrenaline surged. I grasped the gloves thrust into my hands and made my way toward the scene unfolding on the floor. The millionaire looked up, his face a mixture of gratitude and surprise, as if he were seeing a different side of me emerge, one that he had spurred into existence by merely opening up. My hands shook slightly as I approached, and I did my best to wrap the gloves around my trembling fingers. My eyes flickered between the brother's face, ghostly pale against the glossy marble, and the thousands of emotions washing over the millionaire as he desperately applied pressure to a wound. "Can you help me hold his head steady?" he asked, urgency dancing in his voice, a plea that struck an unexpected chord. "I need to make sure I don't injure his neck." The moment our fingers brushed against the victim's skin ignited something deep within me, an electric pulse thrumming through me. I leaned in closer, trapped in a world where time paused, the weight of our journeys seemingly entangled in this frantic yet tender act of survival. Then the world shattered. With a loud bang, the door swung open, and I recognized the abrupt strangeness of shadows creeping inward. In rushed a throng of paramedics, and suddenly, amidst the chaos, everything felt poised on a knife's edge, a cliffhanger teetering perilously. The millionaire turned to me, eyes ablaze with a storm I couldn't fully decipher. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, the brother gasped, drawing in breath painfully. A feverish silence filled the room, and all eyes darted back to the figure on the floor. But what came next, what spilled forth next from that man's lips, would unfurl an entirely different narrative, a confession that could change everything. The undertow of anticipation swept over the crowd as if we were all synchronizing to the heartbeat of the moment, a moment that felt like it could fracture or mend us certainly. "Please," he whispered weakly, "don't let her go. She needs you." The words hung poignantly in the air, drifting like petals caught in a sudden gust. And in that breath, the trajectory of our lives shifted with an unforeseen intensity, binding us into an echoing legacy of choices made and the sacred fragility of existence. The gasping plea reverberated through the tension-racked room, and all eyes converged on the brother's pale face, whose features twisted with the effort to hold onto consciousness. The word trembled on the edge of a precipice, hanging in the air like a fragile secret waiting to be exposed. A heartbeat passed as hope mingled with dread, that precious moment stretching as if time itself was awaiting the truth. "Who?" The millionaire leaned in closer, his expression fierce and protective, yet shadowed by an inkling of fear. It was the same emotion I felt coursing through me, innate terror gnawing at our insides, threatening to spill over. "I am sorry, I don't know." The brother gasped, his mouth barely able to form the words, eyes fluttering with distress. "But you must know." A sudden commotion danced through the periphery of our collective anxiety as the paramedics surged forward, snapping back the thin veil of our reality. Their practiced urgency swept them into action, a reminder that amid personal tribulations, life moves with a relentless force. The millionaire was gently but firmly pushed aside, one of the medics quickly assessing the unconscious man, but a shudder rippled through me as I watched, powerless yet unable to look away. I could see the flicker of hope in the millionaire's eyes guttering against the backdrop of chaos, the same tiny flame that was unearthing my own strength. It occurred to me, in that fragmented moment, that our lives were intertwined not just by our suffering, but by the kind of love and loyalty that lives beneath layers of grief. As they began working on the brother, establishing and four-line and checking for injuries, I felt the weight of uncertainty crush down on my chest. He could be lost. He could stay lost amidst all of this noise. But then I also thought of the million-dollar question. What had he meant about a woman needing him? Was she the same woman I'd seen earlier, the one who had been desperately searching for answers? "Ma'am, can you step back? We need space." One of the paramedics barked, the edge of his voice jolting me from my thoughts. I looked over to the millionaire, who stood right on the outskirts of the scene, hands clenched at his sides, tension radiating from him like heat. I could see of intersecting worry on his face, two lives dangling precariously in the balance. The brother's life, yes, but what about his own? The millionaire had opened a door into something monumental, yet the cracks in his own facade were beginning to widen, trembling under the pressure of unresolved conflict. Just as I thought we might find some clarity, the room seemed to darken again. "We need to get him stabilized," shouted a medic, and panic clawed at my throat. The brother's eyes fluttered open, and though he was barely holding on, he locked eyes for a split second with the millionaire, his gaze intense and meaningful. Then, just as quickly, everything spiraled out of control. The brother's eyes rolled back, the pallor of his skin seeming to wash away any residual color. I gasped, my hands flying to my mouth as my heart raced. I was utterly unprepared for the sense of loss that washed over me in that moment. As faint as it might bite, threatened to engulf all the little glimmers of hope swirling within me. "Can we get some help over here?" Another medic pushed through, and I could feel the atmosphere contorting thickly, a tangle of emotions suffocating me. But then a soothing hand found mine. It was the woman from earlier, the one who had implored me to sit back and let the chaos unfold. Her fingers intertwined with mine, and for a moment, we shared an understanding. There was beauty in the way we were weaving through the tumult together, and I felt a surge of courage from her presence. "Stay strong," She whispered, her voice both a command and a comfort. He's fighting. They're all fighting. I think my voice trembled as I glanced back at the increasingly frantic activity. I think he knows something important. Before the woman could respond, the millionaire's voice cut through the din, raw and desperate. You're not going anywhere, you hear me? Stay with us. His plea wrapped around the brother's fragile spirit, a plea laced with something indefinable. But the brother's next words remained locked in his throat, unspoken yet pregnant with possibilities. It was that internal monologue I felt, as well, the weight of the unknown pressing down upon us, the unsaid truths that could unravel us all. And then a bright light blinked into existence from the corners of my consciousness. A soft voice reverberated around us. A breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped me. The words that followed echoed like an unrelenting wave crashing, without warning. That I know you can hear me. You're stronger than this. Just hold on a little while longer, and please, tell her I love her. The scene transformed into chaos again. I looked back toward the millionaire, who caught my eye searching for an anchory, seemed both terrified and resolute. Then I turned back to the brother, who appeared to be sinking like a ship cast into the deep. The air vibrated with something profound, something I could not quite place. A step toward revelation or utter devastation lay before us, sealing our fates with a burden of expectation threatening to break us wide open. In that crushing moment, a single thought broke through. Whatever the brother knew had the potential to hurt or heal us all. The weight of the world hung heavy in that charged atmosphere. None of us were prepared for what the future might unveil, yet we were drawn toward it like moths to a flame. I could feel the emotions swirling around us, a tempest of longing, hope, and the agony of fractured dreams. With that, the underlying truth was poised to reach us, trembling on the seams of revelation, just as a siren wail echoed in the distance. Life unspooled, twisting into a new direction with an uncertainty to shatter us all. The atmosphere felt suffocating, each breath stolen as I watched the medics work frantically, their movements a blur against the urgent ticking clock echoing in my mind. The brother's body lay helplessly on the floor, a canvas of vulnerability suddenly exposed under the unforgiving glare of fluorescent lights. I could feel the steady thrum of my heart, and with every pulse, the weight of unshared truths seemed to swell within me, threatening to burst free at any moment. Stay awake, please. The millionaire's voice cracked like thunder against the fragile silence of the room. His face, a map of anxiety and rage, revealed the depths of his soul's torment. I wondered what secrets he was clutching, what past had entwined with this desperate fight. As the brother lay there, gasping, something pulled at the edges of my memory, a glimpse of the woman who had spoken to me earlier, her eyes shimmering with a painful blend of hope and heartache. She stood near, her presence both haunting and comforting, and I caught her eye. Was she the missing piece in this puzzle, the hidden link that could illuminate the dark corridors of our uncertainties? Why didn't he say anything before? I murmured, half to myself, half to her. My breath hitched in my throat, stopping the flow of emotions balled up inside me. She seemed to sense my unfolding despair and squeezed my hand tighter. Sometimes, pain makes us silent, she replied softly, her gaze piercing through the chaos, locking onto the millionaire's despair. But truth is relentless. It will find its way out. The brother's eyelids fluttered as he fought against the hold of oblivion. I saw the flicker of a thought pass across his face, as if he were stretching out toward something just beyond his grasp. It was too painful to be merely a physical struggle. Tell her I love her. The words continued to echo in my mind, a haunting refrain that pinned my heart against the cold wall of fear. Love, what a folly in the face of mortality. Did he mean the woman I had seen earlier? Did she know? If she was a part of this story, then her pain was undoubtedly woven into the fraying threads of hope we clung to. Just when I thought I would drown in despair, I caught a glimpse of courage in the millionaire's stance. Despite the searing pain in his eyes, he gritted his teeth and moved closer to his brother. His presence grounded me, pulling me out of the spiral of confusion I had walked into. We're right here with you. You're not alone. His voice, though accompanied by the steel of fear, felt like a beacon cutting through the darkness, coaxing the brother back from the precipice. Fight, pleased at it was as if the brother heard him and, for a fleeting second, stirred beneath the weight of his injuries, his lips moving as if pressing against invisible boundaries. The medics surrounded him, their rhythmic motions a dance of desperation. And then I felt a tremor passing through me, a sensation that we might just claw our way back from this abyss. But at that moment, an unexpected event unfolded. A figure burst into the room, breathing heavily, hair tousled, and eyes wide with uncontained emotion. It was a young woman with a familiar face, her features a mirror of someone I had seen only moments ago. She looked exactly like the woman who affiliated with the brother. My heart raced. "Allie," the woman cried, her voice drenched in urgency. I heard what happened. Please, tell me he's okay." The atmosphere shifted, threading fear and recognition into the air as she rushed forward, breaking through the medics. In her eyes, I saw an urgency that transcended mere concern. It was raw and temporal, dipped in threads of desperation. This was the woman the brother had been calling for. "Do you know him?" I asked, the words spilling from my lips before I realized their weight. "More than you can imagine." She stepped closer, her face flushing with emotions. "I love him. I need to be with him." A sudden wave of reality crashed against us, drawn taut like string pulled to breaking. The brother's life teetered, a pendulum swinging between light and darkness, and in that heartbeat, everything felt like it was about to fracture. The medics, no longer able to maintain their focus, exchanged worried glances as the room vibrated with the deep-seated pain of unvoiced connections. I wanted to scream that love was not enough to stitch together the frayed edges of existence. Yet beneath that despair flickered a fragile ember of hope. "Tell her I love her," the brother's voice, barely audible now, reverberated like the whispered wish of a dying star. And before we could fathom the implications, the clock swung again. The brother's eyes, clouded but sharp with recognition, locked onto the woman who had rushed in so unknowingly, the thread of fate weaving itself tighter around our hearts. Tears spilled freely as Allie reached for his hand. The tension surged, threatening to snap. We stood poised at the edge of reality, the weight of life pressing down upon us, like a storm ready to unleash fury upon everything we had cared for. What would fate decide? In the span of a breath, the delicate fabric of our lives swelled with untold revelations. I realized something profoundly unsettling, my pulse quickening as I felt the tug of knowing unfolding quietly in the shadows. What if the truth was far more twisted than we had ever prepared ourselves for? What if in loving him, Allie had unknowingly wandered into a realm of chaos that could unmoor us all? And then the impossible happened. The brother's heart monitor began to beep irregularly, the sound sharp and jarring, slicing through our fragile state of hope. In that cacophonous moment, I braced myself, knowing that we could soon be on the brink of losing everything. The room fell into a frozen moment of chaos, sounds overlapping in a tangled tapestry of fear and urgency. The brother's heart monitor, once a steady rhythm of life, now screamed a discordant symphony, jolting the medics into hyper-alertness. They swarmed, their presence a blur of motion and determination, but the panic now coursing through me felt immovable, like a stone lodged deep in my throat. Allie's grip on her brother's hand tightened, her tears raining down like an urgent plea for mercy. The millionaire, momentarily stunned, appeared to collapse under the gravity of the unfolding scene. His eyes darted between his brother and Allie, desperation morphing his face into something wholly unrecognizable. I could almost see the jagged pieces of his heart laid bare for us all to see. "No, stay with me." Allie's voice broke against the rising tide of medical commands, her fear transforming into frantic energy. "You're going to be okay. Just hold on." The medics worked like clockwork, the urgency in their gestures telling stories of countless lives fought for and those peacefully surrendered. I could feel time stretching, a fragile thread fraying under the weight of our collective anxiety. I stood there, an outsider enveloped in their whirlwind, wishing I could anchor myself to something or someone. Just moments ago, whispers of love seemed to hover in the air, but now they felt more like chains binding us to despair. The brother's eyes flickered again, his gaze drifting toward Allie, and I saw at Thena's spark of recognition, a deep-seated trust that transcended his physical suffering. "Breathe," I found myself saying, though my voice was barely above a whisper, lost amidst the clamor and chaos. I instinctively reached out, placing my hand on Allie's shoulder, my heart aching for her. He can sense you. You're his lifeline. But as if the universe itself sought to prove me wrong, another wave of beeping erupted, more frantic this to me a sound that echoed every unspoken fear that had gripped my chest since the moment I entered this sterile battle zone. The room seemed to throb with the weight of our shared vulnerability, a circle of souls caught in an unimaginable storm. Just then, a gentle warmth enveloped me, a surprising comfort carrying with it the fragrance of familiarity. I turned to see the woman with the shimmering eyes, the one who had caught my attention earlier. She stood slightly away from the chaos, a silent observer with a strength that pulsed quietly through the air. She stepped forward, seemingly out of instinct, and her hand found mine, perfectly fitting as if we were puzzle pieces drawn together by an unseen force. "You're not alone in this," she murmured, her voice steady, a beacon of light amidst the engulfing darkness. "Stay strong for them." It was a simple sentiment, yet it jolted something inside me. I forced my gaze back to Allie, who was now speaking to her brother in urgent whispers, bathing him in love even as the world sharpened around us. Hope felt fragile, teetering on the precipice of devastation, yet here was this strange woman, encouraging me to believe in it one more time. "Please, don't leave us," I heard myself say, the words falling from my lips like a prayer I didn't know I'd been holding on to. Suddenly, the brother's eyes flickered open wide, and he grasped Allie's hand tighter, an anchor amidst the storm. "Allie," he gasped, the words escaping in desperate breaths, but hope was eclipsing despair. Then, as if the universe had choreographed this moment of epiphany, he continued, "You mean everything to me." The rawness of his confession ignited the air, and even the medics seemed momentarily diverted, drawn to the undeniable bond that pulsed between these two souls. But just as tears of joy began to well in Allie's eyes, the machines emitted a sharp crackle, and the brother's expression turned clouded, his brows knitting in confusion and pain. "Why can't I remember?" His voice was thick with disorientation, and the clarity we had tasted moments earlier began slipping away like sand through our fingers. My heart sank as Allie gasped, the color draining from her face. "What do you mean? You're here with me." She pressed her forehead against his, a heart-wrenching juxtaposition of hope and confusion, but a new fear edged into her voice. "Please come back to me. I can't lose you." But then, everything became fragmented again. The monitors screamed. The medics were shouting instructions. I felt the world narrowing once more, slipping beneath the weight of unanswered questions. Did he not realize what his confession meant? Did he understand the love that had battled through the darkness before now? And then, as the medics called for adrenaline, their movements a flurry of urgency and desperation, I caught the shimmer of the woman beside me, her eyes flickering with recognition. Could it be that she too had loved him once? Had she felt this turmoil? A million questions spun in my mind, a cyclone of uncertainty that left me struggling to find my breath. What if the brother's uncertainty was not just a medical concern but a depth of memory, invoking something darker and unspoken? Would we unravel the truth before it was too late? In that moment, I felt the delicate fabric of our shared reality teetering on the edge of collapse. What if love wasn't enough to tether together the fragile threads of our lives? There was an inescapable weight in the air, an understanding that we were standing on the brink of something monumental. And then I saw the brother's gaze sharpened, now locked on the woman who had entered before. The heartbeat of the room tensed, every breath suspended in time. As life hung on the precipice of revelation, fear and uncertainty intertwined, I grappled with the haunting realization: what if truth was far more convoluted than we understood? What awaited us on the other side of that revelation? And could we withstand its impact when it finally came? The chaos in the room swirled like a tempest, a cacophony of shouts and beeping machines that punctuated the frail silence where love once thrived. Allie's hands remained clamped desperately around her brother's, grasping at every thread of connection, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. But now a new pulse raced through the air, one born of confusion, of questions that threatened to unravel the fragile peace we hung on it. "Oh, you remember me?" The brother's voice, suddenly sharper amidst the chaos, pulled everyone's attention. He seemed both here and somewhere else entirely, as if wrestling not just with his physical ailment, But with the ghosts of a past he couldn't quite grasp, Allie's response was quick, her desperation spilling over. Yes, you know me. We've fought for each other through everything. Please, you can't forget that. I'm right here. But as she spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper, more tangled, lurked beneath the surface of his confusion. The tension in the room was palpable, a suspense that suffocated the air. The woman with the shimmering eyes stood a little taller now, her presence grounding me as I sought answers in the turmoil. What had she planned to say? Why did her gaze betray a history entwined with his? I wished I could unravel the emotions dancing across her face, but Ally's need was more pressing, more immediate. Please, just hold on a moment longer. Ally's plea echoed through the air, the raw plea of a sister who had seen too much darkness. I squeezed her shoulder gently, urging her to maintain that warmth, the connection that had brought us here, even amidst the fear of loss. The brothers' gaze flitted back and forth, confusion born out of the potent cocktail of adrenaline and fear. What's happening? Ally, I can't piece it together. His breaths were growing ragged, and the monitors began to wail again, as if resonating with the rising tide of anguish overtaking the room. The medics glanced at each other urgently as they injected a fresh dose of medicine, rallying their efforts while Ally continued to weave words of comfort, a lighthouse in a storm. The brother's brow furrowed, a struggle playing out in his features that tugged on my heartstrings. I felt the urge to run, to hide from what was so blatantly on display, our fragility, our human need for connection, but instead, I stayed. That I am going to remember. I promise, he murmured, his voice a low rumble that felt more like a prayer than a statement of fact. Ally, you have to believe me. I'm scared. Too thought I lost you once. The room seemed to freeze for a split second, every heart echoing the weight of his words. Ally's expression flickered between hurt and an enduring strength that glimmered like a slight ray of hope peeking through a stormy sky. You didn't lose me. You've always had me, and you'll keep me, I swear. But this time, instead of reassurance, a tremor of uncertainty rippled through the air. The brothers' eyes turned toward the woman, deepening the undercurrent of tension. The atmosphere shifted, becoming laden with questions that hung like stale air. Are you the one from the past? He stuttered. Why can't I remember? Why do you look so familiar? I held my breath, bracing for the storm that was clearly brewing. The woman's face paled, a flicker of vulnerability cracking her facade as realization crossed her features. The medics were still working, time stretching, bending as they desperately attempted to reel him back from the brink, but for some of us, it wasn't just a life hanging in the balance. The tension culminated in a sharp gasp from the woman, her hand moving instinctively to her mouth. Your memories, they came flooding back after the accident. You chose to forget, she murmured, her voice low but carrying the weight of incendiary truths. What? Ally turned, disbelief spluttering from her lips like a dam breaking. What do you mean he chose to forget? What happened between the two of you? The brother flinched at Ally's outburst, confusion deepening across his brow. I need to understand. Why would I choose that? The desperation in his voice resonated painfully in my chest, each syllable a call for clarity that felt cruelly out of reach. The medics worked faster, the atmosphere becoming heavier with unspoken possibilities. Ally's body shook with unrestrained emotion, the tremors of pain radiating outwards. The invisible strands that bound us in love tangled around longing, hope, and the firm grip of fear of what lay beneath the layers of their past. Because it hurt too much, the woman finally said, a veil of sadness clouding her features. You didn't think you could face it again. You thought it would kill you. Her eyes darted around the room, sensing the gravity of our collective breaths, each one increasing the tension in the air. Wait, Ally started, voice trembling as she looked between the two of them, a world of questions swirling just below the surface. What could possibly hurt so much that you'd erase it from your memory? You loved each other. The brother's gaze widened, and for a moment, clarity lit up his eyes. I remember a couple of days before his voice broke. Trailing off into the urgency around us, I felt a lurch in my heart, the implications heavy and poignant. There was something hidden between them that had formed a rift too vast for any of us to comprehend. I glanced at the woman whose eyes were brimming with unshed tears. Perhaps they were born of love once shared, or a truth yet to be spoken. And just as the truth threatened to spill out, As the storm of emotion built to its zenith, the monitor screeched, a horrific cacophony echoing in our ears. The brother's face twisted, caught between pain and realization, and I felt the walls of my own heart constricting. "Don't, please don't," Ali cried, gripping his hand tighter, panic rising in her voice. But just as I thought hope had frayed at the edges, another spark ignited within the brother's eyes. A flicker of recollection, a December day wrapped in laughter, the warmth of a shared sunset, or perhaps the sting of unfulfilled love. Was this the beginning of a truth we could not combat? "Wait, I know," he gasped, just before everything around us shifted, crashing down like a wave, his memories fighting through the raging storm. There was an accident, and then the world darkened, shadows stretching long and deep, the room around us fading as his consciousness wavered like a candle in the wind, each heartbeat painfully slow. As I understood, in that moment, we weren't just grappling with his past. We were standing at the edge of something that might destroy or redeem us all. The sterile room flickered with the harsh light of the monitors, each beep a reminder of the life clinging tenuously to the precipice. Ali's grip on her brother's hand tightened almost around the frailty of hope itself, as if her tenacity could anchor him to this world. Her breath quickened, a frantic rhythm that underscored the growing tension that crackled in the air. Every emotion swirled, and I could feel the pulse of fears rising. It wasn't just the brother's life on the line. It was the fabric of their family, each thread woven with the essence of love, pain, and unyielding bonds. "God, I can't lose you again." Ali's voice broke through the turmoil, her eyes glistening like stars struggling for light in an ominous night sky. It was that genuine fear of the inevitable that clung fiercely to her words, and as the brothers' breaths roiled in rising turmoil, I felt my own heart fracture a little more. "I am trying," he gasped, the battle between clarity and confusion etching lines around his eyes. "I swear I'm trying to remember." The assurance, though frail, was a fragile gift he desperately sought to offer to her. But he was fighting a battle only partly of his own choosing, and the echoes of past wounds threatened to overwhelm Hymas. The woman with the shimmering eyes looked torn as she traced the contours of her grief, like an artist who feared revealing a masterpiece of sorrow. It was clear there were history-laden whispers between her and the brother, a tapestry of love gone awry, threads of heartbreak creating an unbreakable bond. "Please, you need to remember for Ali," she urged, her voice trembling now, raw with unshed emotions. "Remember what we lost so we can find a way back." There was an ache in her words that resonated within the four walls, forming a raw collective yearning for redemption, a chance to mend fragmented pieces. Lost. What did we lose? The brother's eyes darted towards her, pleading for the pieces to fill the void spilling across his memory like spilled ink, threatening to stain what lay ahead. Ali turned sharply, her face pale, as if combing through possibilities. "You mean you have more memories with her? Outside of all this?" She gestured broadly but seemed to anchor her gaze on the woman, reaching for answers that should have been straightforward but felt agonizingly far away. "Yes," the woman dared, her voice dipping beneath a wave of nostalgia. "There were moments before the accident, moments that should have defined us before I became a ghost of your past." A weighty silence settled among us, the cracks of déjà vu reverberating through the room as my thoughts churned. How could memories glorious and excruciating create such a chasm between them? The brother began to breathe heavily, as if realizing that the dappled sunlight of their forgotten moments was flashing before his eyes, invisible tendrils reaching through time. "But it hurt. It still hurts, doesn't it?" His voice cracked, and it was clear he wasn't just grappling with the torment of lost memories. He was wrestling with a fear deeper than the fear of forgetting. "You had to let go. We all thought we hoped you'd be able to rebuild without the pain," the woman whispered, tears burgeoning unshed in her eyes. "But it's still there. It never left you, not truly." Her confession trembled through the air, each word surrendering a piece of her heart, as if holding on to that truth would rip even her apart. "Why couldn't you tell me?" he implored, reaching for her the same way he held on to Alaya's simultaneous yearning and trepidation for connection and understanding. I felt caught in the electric pulse of his struggling, a fight amplified by uncried memories, the unsaid truths that could fracture our very existence if they surfaced. Because it was easier to believe you could heal. She hesitated, searching for strength in a fragile voice. And I was terrified of losing you completely. Ally's breath hitched as she processed the labyrinth they had all stepped into, emotions cascading in a way that felt insurmountable. For a beat, the room morphed into a vessel of fragile hope, but it was as sudden as it was precarious, the silence thickening as the brother remained focused, lost in the rivulets of memory flooding through him. I am so scared. Ally, he whispered, his voice trembling as he turned toward her. What if I remember too much? What if I can't handle it? Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but it was their shared love that gleamed brighter, a bond resolute amidst the tempest of doubt. You don't have to handle it all alone. I'm here. I will be here, no matter how painful the truth may be. It was a promise shimmering in her voice, yet the ache echoed against the hospital walls, the unyielding reality that some truths could splinter the foundation of our relationships irreversibly. I felt the gravity of it all. The potential for both healing and devastation was woven delicately around us, a dance in shadows. But then, as if orchestrated by fate, it happened. Another surge of alarms broke the haunting silence, blasting through the air and reverberating violently. Ally's raw cry gripped me, captured in the throes of rising panic. Get back, she shouted at the medics, her eyes wide, suddenly realizing the predicament her brother was unraveling, caught between the cusp of memory and consciousness. Don't leave me, he gasped as the room blurred in. Impending silence fell upon us, followed by the cacophony of machines that clamored against grief's heavy wings. As the brother's eyes flickered between clarity and chaos, he murmured, I need to find out the truth. But as his voice faded, the pallor of uncertainty washed over the room. Shadows enveloped us while futures hung precariously in the balance. And then everything faded into chaos, enveloping hope in a shroud of frantic uncertainty, a stark reminder of life's fragility, our collective breaths caught in a web of unanswered questions. Would clarity come too late? Would we all have to bear the weight of memories lost? And, just then, amidst the chaos, came the whisper of revelation. I remember I never believed. It echoed into the darkened corners of our fear, the darkness mingling with a tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, what lay ahead wouldn't shatter us completely, but force us to confront the specters of our past. Would we be strong enough to face them? Or would we shatter beneath their weight, forever lost in the dark? The hospital room had metamorphosed into a storm, a tempest of emotions and uncertainty crashing against the walls. Ally clutched her brother's hand tightly, her heart pounding louder than the alarms that speared through the air. The profound urgency of his last words wrapped around them like a noose. I never believed hovered, reverberating in the silence between them. What truth lay hidden beneath the tangled roots of despair? As the frantic medics pushed through the door, Ally felt as if she were standing on the edge of an abyss, anxious breath caught in her throat. Each moment stretched out, the seconds turning into an eternity while her brother's brow furrowed, his face a portrait of internal conflict. A hand brushed against her shoulder, tangible and warm in the chaos. Her mother stood beside her, eyes wide, breathless. The weight of shared fears surged through them, a current of nostalgia spiraling even deeper into anguish. Stay with me, please, her brother murmured as the world around him distorted with the sounds of urgency and the flurry of medical professionals. His voice cracked, a harrowing reminder of his vulnerability. It was a reminder that in this fractured reality, they were all walking on the edge of grief. Fight, please fight. Ally's voice trembled, desperation lacing her plea. You have to. It wasn't just for him. It was for the family they once were, a family woven with laughter, a brother who danced through life with careless joy. And now, he stood teetering on the precipice. Yet, against the deluge of despair, a flicker of kindness emerged. A nurse, a stranger, leaned down next to Ally, her eyes bright yet warm. He's fighting, she urged softly. Sometimes, it takes opening old wounds to heal. We'll do our best. Her steadiness broke through the tension, a balm for Ally's raw anguish, and briefly, a sense of hope kindled in the depths. Then, the world shifted again. The machines blared a cacophony of chaos, but amid the clamor was a singular, haunting silence, a moment, however brief, crystallizing an urgency that simmered just below the threshold of understanding. Allie felt the weight of hidden truths pressing against her chest, suffocating her with the air of possibility and dread. Memories are fickle, her brother breathed, forcing himself to focus through the haze. What if remembering brings back not just the joy, the love, but also the shadows? Allie's eyes glistened with anguish, but held an unwavering resolve. We're here to face it all together. The past can hurt, but we have to walk through it to find the light. Tempting though it may be to run, we can't. Her words faltered as the door swung open, a commanding presence sweeping into the room. A figure stood there, taut with authority, piercing gaze locked onto her brother. I can help him remember, the newcomer declared, confidence lacing every syllable. Allie's heart raced as she instinctively recoiled. Who are you? The air grew thick with uncertainty, emotions swirling at the edge of confrontation. I'm invested in his recovery, the man replied, voice steady but edged with urgency. There was an unsettling familiarity about him, a flicker of recognition that nipped at the corners of her mind. But I need to know, does he trust me? Allie hesitated, grappling with the innocuous nature of his question, but there was something calculated in his approach. What do you mean invested? What do you really have to gain? She shot back, fueled by instinct and protectiveness. The man's lips twitched slightly, revealing the faintest hint of something deeper in emotion buried under layers of composure. You wouldn't understand, but sometimes hope lies in connections born from loss, and he needs to confront the darkness to see the light. Why should we believe you? Allie felt a protective glaze settle around her brother. She wouldn't allow anyone else to tarnish his healing. And why should my brother trust a stranger? A flicker of pain crossed his face, and for a moment, Allie studied him. There was depth behind the polished demeanor, shadows lurking just beneath the surface. Because I lost. Someone too. Someone precious. I know what it's like to walk through the ashes of memory, and I want him to know that he's not alone. The sincerity in his voice stung, stirring something within Allie, the thread of bittersweet understanding woven between them, as she felt the weight of loss ripple in the air. Just then, alarms blared louder, a piercing crescendo that felt as if it might splinter the fragile situation into pieces. He needs intervention now, a doctor shouted, urgency consuming the space. Panic seeped back into Allie's heart as the man stepped closer, leaning toward her brother, his commanding presence stark against the bed. Tell me, can you remember? Dig deep, it's important. You're not alone in this fight. Allie's breath hitched as she felt the air grow dense with desperation. Would he truly be able to navigate through his own shadows? Were the answers meant to be unveiled or left buried forever? And just as her brother's gaze locked onto the stranger with raw intensity, a life-altering revelation broke free. I remember running the light, laughter, and then, he gasped, the car? It's all coming back. Hope soared for a heart-stopping moment, but with it surged fear. What would these memories inevitably unravel? Would bared truths coalesce into healing, or would they shatter the remnants of their crumbling family beyond repair? I never believed, he whispered, his voice trembling with an urgency transformed into terror. Allie felt the ground shift beneath her. The fragile hope now felt heavier than ever, a double-edged sword that could either save or destroy them. Everything hung in a precarious balance as the alarms echoed in unison with the unsettling truth. Suddenly, a doctor moved to disconnect a monitoring line, and a flicker of dread struck deep. She sensed an invisible threshold about to be crossed, one laden with fragility and heartbreak. Hold on. Allie's voice broke through the chaos, refusing to let that thread of connection dissipate. Please, just hold on a little longer. But as the brother's eyes drifted into shadows of recollection, the tension and uncertainty wound tighter around them all, shrouding the room with an impending sense of doom. Would this be their moment of reckoning, or the final fracture that would leave their family teetering into darkness? In the labyrinth of memory and emotion, they were all lost against the tides. As my brother's eyes narrowed, the world around us seemed to slow, a haunting silence punctuated only by the beeping machines. I held his hand tighter, willing him to stay with me, to find the strength to navigate these turbulent waters. Stay with me, I urged again, my voice trembling with the weight of it all. I never believed I could come back, he mumbled, the words weaving between lucidity and confusion. But I see it now. His breaths were labored as memories began flooding back, the laughter, the light spilling in through the trees on those warm afternoons. I can almost feel her. The room pulsed, a collective heartbeat throbbing through everyone who had found themselves drawn into our world of trauma. Even the nurse, hovering protectively, paused as if grasping the essence of what was unfolding. What if the pain is too much? My brother continued, his gaze darting between me and the man who had entered our lives with intentions unknown. Panic flickered through me. Was this stranger a connection or a shackle pulling him back into despair? Confronting the darkness is what sets you free, the man said, his voice steady yet laced with an urgency that cut through my fear. But it's a journey only you can choose to take. And in that moment spent in the swirl of unsaid emotions, I realized my brother wasn't just battling the ghosts of his memory. We were all standing at a precipice, each of us intertwined by unvoiced struggles and prayers. My heart threatened to splinter as I caught the eye of the woman, whose sorrow mirrored our own. What stories lay buried behind our shared pain? Remember what you've lost, I urged gently, pulling him closer to the light within the chaos. But remember too that you must face it together. I promise I will not let go. He blinked slowly, his breaths hitching as if he were steering a ship through an unrelenting storm. I see her, he whispered, a fragile thread pulling us toward silence. But I'm scared. Of losing yourself? The man pressed, his gaze unwavering, as if imploring my brother to embrace the full weight of his past. Or of losing everything you found. Tears cascaded down my brother's cheeks, and I felt the ache of our shared history wrapped around each memory. Both, he finally admitted, voice trembling. Both terrify me. In that fleeting moment, I could see the depth of his fear mingled with a desire to reclaim what had once been lost. I remembered our laughter, our football games, the Sunday dinners that filled our hearts with warmth. But now, all that seemed overshadowed by the specter of grief that loomed before us. You don't have to do it alone, I said, squeezing his hand. We will walk this path together. And the truth, the beautiful, terrifying truth, surfaced in the depths of our honesty. This wasn't just about him remembering. It was about us. The mistakes, the pain, and all the love that had endured through it all, despite the fractures. No matter how tangled the past seemed, our future was still unwritten. Suddenly, the brother's face turned towards the woman who had entered earlier. You, he gasped, memory bubbling up like freed water. You were there. You were always there. The air shifted again, charged with electricity as realization cascaded through us all. You loved each other, Ali breathed, suddenly aware of the connections binding us together, fraying yet resolute. Yes, the woman's voice trembled, vulnerability spilling forth. But you were my light. I couldn't let you go then, but I saw you slipping away, and I was afraid. The brother's face paled, shadows clinging to his features as if haunted by unseen depths. It's all shifting. He breathed raggedly. Will you forgive me? The question reverberated like a bell ringing across the chasm of uncertainty, echoing in the hearts of those surrounding him. But the unsaid answers lingered like fragile glass, sharp in their potency, yet boundlessly reflective of love. Forgive what? The woman urged, stepping closer, voice breaking yet filled with unwavering strength. For not fighting harder, he cried, voice thick with emotion. For running away when it hurt too much. I thought I was protecting you just as much as I was trying to save myself. And there it was, the devastating truth hanging in the air, as we all came face to face with the ache of love and loss that demanded reconciliation. Her breath caught. But we still have a chance. You can come back. For us. In the clamor of the room, I felt a palpable shift. The brother's understanding deepened as fresh tears traced paths of vulnerability down his cheeks. I never believed I could walk back. But perhaps that's what hope is. The realization washed over me in a flood, illuminating the shadows once and for all. We were more than the pain bound to our histories. We were a tapestry woven with threads of love, loss, and now, the possible beginning of healing. And just as hope hung in the air, as tangible and sweet as the scent of summer rain after a storm, I reached for my brother's hand again. No matter what happens, we're here. All of us. Hear me? His face twisted in struggle, emotions swirling like a tempest, conflicting yet yearning for light. Then he nodded, the weight of himself still heavy but with flickers of determination breaking through the dark. Then help me remember. Help me find my way back before I lose everything, including you. And with that, a collective breath coursed through the room, one not just of despair, but of possibility. Hope flooded our hearts like liquid gold, glimmering in the shadows, a paradigm shift before our very eyes. For in that truth, we understood. The road wouldn't be easy, but it was ours to tread together a resolutely shared journey of memory, love, and ultimately, forgiveness. As the last echoes of despair faded, the monitor steadied, a melodic heartbeat thriving in the space between memories and the dawning of a new truth. And as I held on to my brother, who now understood that love was worth every perilous step back into the light, I took a breath that would transcend any fear. Together, I whispered, just as reality shifted, sending warmth pulsing through our limbs, igniting the flicker of hope once more, forever intertwining our fates. We would find our way. We would reclaim what had been lost, and in the process, discover something even greater than before. All of us fighting for what still remained, for what was still possible, because we would always choose to remember and to love. And as the hand of fate turned, sealing our intertwined destinies, I knew I had finally found my footing again. With each heartbeat, with every promise, I felt the first tentative steps back into the brightness of a life yet unlived. Together, I whispered, hearts beating in unison as a new dawn broke softly on the horizon, a testament to endurance born of love and the fragility that blossomed from pain. And with that last echo, I knew the journey would endure, echoing into the endless possibilities that stretched before us. This new beginning would rise from the ashes of our metamorphosis, born of grief, transformed into hope, leaving behind the shadows that once ensnared us. Together, forever, would make our way across the light.